I'm standing in the circular driveway of the Grand Laurel estate on a Saturday morning in June, and the sun is doing that thing where it turns everything golden. The manicured hedges, the fountain with its 3 tiers of cascading water, the ivory stone facade of the most exclusive wedding venue in the state. It's the kind of place you see in magazines, the kind of place that costs more for one day than most people spend on a car. I'm not here as a guest. I'm here watching a couple I actually care about, Jessica, my coworker and friend, and her fiancé, Marcus, walk through those massive oak doors with the venue coordinator, their faces bright with disbelief and joy. Jessica keeps looking back at me like she's afraid she'll wake up from a dream. I smile and wave her on. This is real. This is happening. 6 months ago, this was supposed to be my sister Brittany's venue. 6 months ago, I would have done anything to make Brittany happy, to make my whole family happy, honestly. I'd spent 23 years trying. Today, I did something better. I made sure her wedding would never happen here. And I made sure this place, this beautiful, sunlit symbol of every dream deferred and every promise broken, went to someone who actually deserved it. The coordinator glances at me one more time, a slight smile on her face. She knows. Margaret Chen, the owner, knows too. They're not just complicit in what I've done, they believe it was right. I take a breath, smell the lavender from the gardens, and let myself feel it. The satisfaction, cold and complete, but also the loss, because what I did cost me my family. Not that I had much of one to begin with. But to understand how I got here, how I went from the invisible daughter to the person who dismantled my sister's dream wedding piece by piece, you need to know what they took from me. And I don't just mean the money. It started 6 months ago, in my tiny apartment on the wrong side of town. I was sitting on my thrift store couch, surrounded by student loan statements that might as well have been printed in blood-red ink, eating my 4th consecutive dinner of ramen with a fried egg on top, my signature. I'm pretending this is a recipe meal when my phone rang. Mom. I should have known something was coming. She didn't call unless she needed something or had news she wanted to spin before I could form my own opinion about it. Maya, honey, her voice was syrupy, performative. I have the most exciting news. Can you come to dinner on Sunday? Family only. Brittany has an announcement. I already knew what it was. Brittany had been dating Chad for 11 months and had been posting increasingly pointed TikToks about hint hint and showing off her ring finger with sad face emojis. But I said yes, because that's what I did. I showed up. I smiled. I played my role as the good, dependable daughter. Sunday dinner was at their house, the 4-bedroom colonial in the suburb with the good school district, the one they'd bought when I was 7 and Brittany was 4. The table was set like something from a lifestyle blog, linen napkins, the fancy dishes, a standing rib roast that probably cost $80. Brittany was practically vibrating in her seat. Her left hand kept floating up to tuck her hair behind her ear, and that's when I saw it. The ring, not subtle, definitely not cheap. "Oh my God, congratulations," I said, right on cue, and I meant it. I didn't hate my sister, I just existed in her shadow. Brittany squealed and launched into the story. Chad proposed on a beach at sunset. There was a photographer hiding in the dunes. It was literally like a movie. Mom cried those performative tears she saves for Facebook moments. Dad clapped Chad on the back. I sat there with my wine and smiled until my face hurt. Then came dessert. Mom's famous tiramisu, which she only made for special occasions. That's when Brittany started talking about the wedding. "So, I've already been doing research," she said, pulling out her phone and swiping to a carefully curated album of screenshots. "And I found my dream venue. It's called the Grand Laurel Estate. It's about an hour from here, and oh my God, you guys, it's perfect. It's got these gardens and this ballroom with chandeliers and a bridal suite that looks like something from a castle." "How much?" Dad asked, which was the first practical thing anyone had said all night. Brittany bit her lip, doing her practiced "I'm so humble and grateful" face. "Well, the venue itself is $52,000, but that includes tables, chairs, linens, setup, breakdown, and we get it for the whole day, plus the bridal suite the night before." I barely stopped myself from choking on my wine. $52,000 for one day. I'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through college and still graduated with $40,000 in debt, and my little sister was casually throwing around numbers that would have changed my entire life. But I didn't say that. I never said things like that. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. It wasn't a "that's outrageous" look. It was a "we need to tell her" look. And that's when I felt it, the first cold drip of dread down my spine. "Brittany, honey, your father and I have talked about it," Mom said, reaching over to squeeze Brittany's hand. "And we want you to have your dream wedding. You only do this once." Hopefully, I thought, but didn't say. "And we've worked out the finances. You don't need to worry about the venue." Brittany actually screamed, literally screamed, like she'd won a game show. She jumped up and ran around the table to hug them both, and Mom was crying again, and Dad looked proud in that quiet way he did when he got to play the hero. And then Mom turned to me. "Maya, sweetie, we've been meaning to talk to you about something." The room went very still. Or maybe that was just me, some instinct freezing me in place like prey that knows the predator has its scent. "It's about your college fund." The fund? The one my grandmother, my dad's mom, the only person in the family who ever really saw me, had set up when I was born. The one she'd contributed to every birthday and Christmas. The one she'd made my parents promise to protect. "We know you already graduated," Mom continued, her voice so reasonable, so calm, like she was explaining why we were out of milk. "So you don't really need it anymore, and Brittany's wedding is such an important investment in her future." "We reallocated it," Dad cut in. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "About $48,000. It covered the venue deposit and part of the catering budget." I couldn't breathe, literally could not pull air into my lungs. $48,000. My money, the money Grandma saved, the money that was supposed to launch me into adulthood without drowning in debt, the reason I thought I'd be okay. Gone. Spent on flowers and napkins, and a ballroom for my sister's one special day. "Maya." Mom's voice had an edge now. "Aren't you going to say anything?" I looked at Brittany. She was smiling, just a little uncomfortable, but not guilty, not apologetic. She genuinely thought this was fine. I looked at my parents. Dad was staring at his plate. Mom was watching me like I was a problem to be managed. And I realized they expected me to be okay with this. They expected me to smile and hug Brittany and say congratulations and move on, because that's what I always did. I took a sip of wine, swallowed, found my voice. "When did you take it?" "The deposit was due in March," Dad said. "We'd been planning to talk to you, but—" "March, 4 months ago. 4 months they'd known and they hadn't said a word. And you're just telling me now." "We knew you'd be upset," Mom said, and there it was. The faint accusation like my feelings were the problem. "But we're a family, Maya. Brittany's wedding is a family celebration. We all have to make sacrifices." Sacrifices. I'd sacrificed sleep, health, friendships, and 4 years of my life working myself to the bone while they paid for Brittany's car, her rent, her Instagram-worthy spring breaks. And now they'd sacrificed my future for her wedding. "Of course," I heard myself say, "I'm happy for you, Britt." The smile she gave me was radiant and empty. I stayed for another 20 minutes, then claimed early work the next morning and left. I cried the entire drive home. But the tears didn't last long. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, something else had replaced them. Ray. Not the hot, screaming kind, the cold kind, the kind that starts doing math. Because here's what they didn't know. What they'd never bothered to learn because they'd never looked at me long enough to see it. I'd spent my entire childhood being second best, and I'd learned to survive by being smarter, more careful, more strategic than everyone around me. I was 7 years old the night of my elementary school winter concert. I had a solo, just 2 lines, but I'd practiced for weeks. I was so proud. My teacher said I had the voice of an angel. Brittany had a dance recital across town the same night. Beginner ballet. She was 4. She didn't even like ballet. Mom had signed her up because the outfits were cute. My parents missed my concert, both of them. They sent my Aunt Linda to video it, and she forgot to charge the camera. I sang my solo to an audience that didn't include my family, came home to an empty house with Aunt Linda, and waited for them to come back. When they did, they were gushing about how cute Brittany looked in her tutu, how she only fell once, how the other parents thought she was adorable. "How was your concert, honey?" Mom asked, distracted, already pulling out her phone to post photos of Brittany. "Good," I said. She didn't ask anything else. That became the pattern. Brittany's mediocre achievements were celebrated like Olympic victories. My actual accomplishments were met with distracted nods. When I made valedictorian, Mom said, "That's wonderful, sweetie," and then spent the rest of dinner talking about Brittany's homecoming dress. When I got a full tuition scholarship offer to a state school, Dad said, "Why not community college? It's cheaper," because he was already mentally reallocating that college fund even then. When Brittany barely graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA, they threw her a party and bought her a car so she could explore her options. I worked 3 jobs my sophomore year of college: campus library, weekend catering, and freelance bookkeeping, because the scholarship didn't cover housing and I refused to ask my parents for help. I knew where I ranked. I lived on 4 hours of sleep and sold my plasma twice a month for grocery money. I didn't go to a single party, didn't study abroad, didn't do anything that cost money I didn't have. Meanwhile, Brittany's Instagram was a highlight reel of brunches, concerts, beach trips, all funded by Mom and Dad, who didn't want her to struggle. The college fund was the one thing I had that was supposed to be mine asterisk. Grandma Joan had set it up the day I was born. She'd been a public school teacher for 40 years, and she believed education was sacred. Every birthday, every Christmas, she'd add to it. When I was 16, she sat me down and showed me the paperwork. "This is for you, Maya," she said, her hands, spotted with age, steady with conviction, holding mine. "For asterisk your asterisk dreams, your education, your future, not anyone else's. I've made your parents co-custodians because the law requires it until you're 18, but I'm telling you now, this money is yours. Don't let anyone tell you different." She died my freshman year of college. Lung cancer, fast and brutal. I'd gotten the call during my shift at the library. I couldn't afford to fly home for the funeral, so I took a bus, 7 hours each way, and missed 3 days of work I desperately needed. At the funeral, Mom hugged me and said, "She was so proud of you, you know." I believed her then. Now, sitting in my apartment, staring at my phone, I pulled up my banking app and scrolled back through my records. I found the joint account, the one with my name and my parents' names, the custodial fund that had transferred to me at 18, but that I'd left in their hands because I trusted them, because they said they'd help me manage it for when I really needed it. The balance was $62. I checked the transaction history. March 15th, withdrawal $24,000. March 30th, withdrawal $24,000. $48,000, gone in 2 transactions. The same month, the Grand Laurel estate would have required a deposit. I sat there in the dark, my laptop glowing, and I felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel toward my family before. Not sadness, not disappointment. Pure, crystalline hate. No, not hate. Something more useful. The desire for justice. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what I always did when the world felt like it was collapsing. I made a plan. By sunrise, I had a list of questions. By Monday morning, I had a lawyer consultation booked, free, through my university's alumni legal aid network. And by Monday afternoon, I'd called my parents. Mom answered on the 3rd ring. "Maya, I'm so glad you called. I was worried you were upset after dinner. I need to talk about the college fund." A pause. I could hear the TV in the background, one of her daytime shows. "Honey, we already discussed this." "No, you told me what you'd done. We didn't discuss anything." I kept my voice level, reasonable. I'd rehearsed this. "I looked at the account. You took $48,000. That money was supposed to be for me. Grandma set it up for me. And we used it to invest in your sister's future, Mom said, her tone sharpening. A wedding is a significant life event, Maya. It's about family. Building a foundation. I'm drowning in student loans. I worked 3 jobs to get through school because I thought the fund would be there when I graduated. You told me not to worry, that it was safe. You're being dramatic. Those 4 words hit me like a slap. I'm being dramatic asterisk. Mom, that was $48,000. Money your father and I managed for years. Money we had legal access to. We made a decision as a family. You didn't ask me. Because we knew you'd be selfish about it. I actually laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. Selfish. I'm selfish for wanting the money my grandmother saved for my education, but Brittany's not selfish for taking it for a party. It's not a party, it's a asterisk wedding. It's one day, Mom. One day versus 4 years of me killing myself because I didn't have help. No one told you to work that hard. You've always been so intense about everything, so competitive. Competitive with who? Brittany. I wasn't competing, Mom, I was just trying to survive. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Her voice went ice cold. You're making this about you when it should be about your sister's happiness. Do you know how hurtful that is? She's your only sister, Maya. This is her day. I closed my eyes, pressed my fingers to the bridge of my nose. Is there any way to get some of it back? Even half? My loan payments are. What's done is done, my father's voice cut in. He'd picked up the other line. Of course he had. We can't exactly ask for the deposit back, Maya. The contract is signed. You signed a contract with my money and didn't tell me. We're your parents. We don't need your permission to make financial decisions we think are best for the family. Best for Brittany, you mean? That's enough. Dad's voice had that note of finality he always used when he was done with a conversation. I understand you're upset, but I need you to be the bigger person here. Brittany is so excited, and if you ruin this for her with your resentment. My asterisk resentment. It will hurt the whole family. We raised you better than that. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, shaking. They'd made me the villain. In the span of one phone call, I'd gone from victim to problem. I tried one more time, via text, the next day. Dad, I just want to understand the timeline. When exactly did you decide to use the fund? Did you consider asking me first? His response came 3 hours later. Your mother and I discussed it extensively. We knew you'd finished school and that Brittany needed help. That's what family does. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I called the lawyer that afternoon. Her name was Sandra Liu, and she'd graduated from my program 6 years ahead of me. She listened to everything, asked for documentation, and then delivered the news I already knew in my gut. The fund was custodial, which means your parents had legal control until you were 18. After that, it should have transferred fully to you, but if you left their names on the account and didn't explicitly remove their access, they technically had the legal right to withdraw. Even though it was earmarked for me. Do you have documentation stating that? I thought of Grandma's verbal promise, her hand holding mine, the conviction in her voice. Nothing legally binding, I said. Then I'm sorry, but you don't have a case for theft or misuse. Morally, yes, it's reprehensible. Legally, your hands are tied. She paused. You could try small claims court, but you'd need to prove the funds were explicitly designated for your sole use, and even then, the statute of limitations and the custodial structure would make it nearly impossible. You'd spend more on legal fees than you'd recover. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I stared at the ceiling of my apartment and felt the truth settle over me like a weighted blanket. I couldn't fight them in court, but maybe I didn't need to. The bridal shower invitation arrived 2 weeks later. Pale pink with gold lettering. Join us in celebrating Brittany's journey to I Do. It was at a boutique tea house downtown, the kind of place that charged $30 for a pot of Earl Grey and 3-finger sandwiches. I almost didn't go. I'd been low contact with my family since the phone call, ignoring the group chat where Mom posted wedding updates and Brittany shared Pinterest boards. But then I got a text from Brittany herself. "Please come on Sunday. I know things have been weird, but you're my sister and I need you there. Plus, Mom says you're being difficult and I don't want drama. Just come, please." There was no apology, no acknowledgement. Just I need you there, and don't cause drama. I should have stayed home. But some part of me, some stupid, hopeful part, thought maybe if I showed up, if I tried one more time, someone would see me. Someone would realize what they'd done. So I went. The tea house was decorated like a wedding vomited on it. White and blush balloons, rose gold everything. A banner that said, "She said yes," over the gift table. There were about 20 women there. Brittany's friends, Mom's friends, a few cousins. They all looked at me when I walked in, not warmly. Mom had already spun the narrative. I could see it in their eyes. Brittany hugged me, all performance. "I'm so glad you came. Here, sit next to Jess and Morgan." Two of her college friends, who'd never spoken to me before and didn't start now. The shower was exactly what I expected. Games involving toilet paper wedding dresses and guessing how many kisses were in a jar. A table full of gifts I couldn't afford to match. Mimosas I didn't drink because I had a shift at my weekend catering job in 3 hours. Then came the presentation. Brittany stood up, flushed and giddy, and her maid of honor wheeled out a screen and projector. "So, I wanted to share some of the wedding details with you guys because I'm, so obsessed," Brittany said, and everyone laughed like she'd told a joke. The first image, the grand Laurel estate. It was even more beautiful in professional photos. The gardens at sunset, the ballroom with its crystal chandeliers, the sweeping staircase where the bride would make her entrance. "This is our venue," Brittany breathed, and the room erupted in oohs and ahs. She clicked through. The ceremony setup, the reception tables, the bridal suite with its chandelier and velvet furniture. Someone, one of Mom's friends, asked the question, "Brittany, honey, this must have cost a fortune. How did you manage it?" Brittany beamed. "My parents are literally the best. They've been saving for this my whole life. They surprised me with it and She faked a little tear. "I'm so lucky. Not everyone has parents who invest in their dreams like this." The room went soft with sentimental sighs. I dug my nails into my palm, so hard I left marks. No mention of me. No mention of where that money actually came from. Just Brittany, golden and grateful, and our parents, generous and selfless. After the slideshow, they brought out a basket. "Okay, so," Brittany said, "we need to talk contributions for the bachelorette party. We're doing a weekend in Charleston. So fun, right? And we've broken down costs per person." Her maid of honor started handing out envelopes. I opened mine. Bachelorette party, hotel, activities, dinner, 800 asterisk. Bridesmaid dress, alterations, shoes, 450 asterisk. Hair and makeup day of, 200 asterisk. Bridal shower contribution, your share, 300 asterisk. Total, $1,750. I made $19 an hour at my day job. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It just bubbled up, sharp and a little unhinged. Brittany looked at me. "What's funny?" "Nothing," I managed. "Just this is a lot." "I mean, it's a wedding." She shrugged, smiling. "It's what you do for family." Family. I looked around the room, at the women sipping mimosas and admiring Brittany's ring, at my mother watching me with narrowed eyes, daring me to make a scene, at the screen, still glowing with the image of the grand Laurel estate. The venue my grandmother's money had bought. And something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for 23 years, finally snapped. I smiled, stood up, tucked the envelope into my purse. "You know what, Britt? I'll see what I can do." I left before the cake. That night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop, a notebook, and a rage so pure it felt like clarity. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to appeal to their better natures, because they didn't have any, not where I was concerned. But I also wasn't going to let this go. If I couldn't get my money back, I could at least make sure it didn't buy Brittany her dream wedding. I opened a browser and typed, Grand Laurel Estate. The website loaded elegant, understated, exactly as expensive as it looked. I clicked through the galleries, the testimonials, the FAQ. Then I found the page I needed, booking and policies. I read every word. Booking required a 50% deposit to hold the date, non-refundable, except in cases of venue error or contract breach. The remaining balance was due 60 days before the event. Cancellations made by the client forfeited the deposit. Transfers of contract required approval from both parties and venue management. I opened a new tab and searched for reviews, deep dive wedding forums, anything that mentioned the Grand Laurel Estate. One thread on a wedding planning subreddit caught my eye. Has anyone dealt with Margaret Chen at GLE? She was so strict about our payment schedule, but also really sweet when we had a family emergency. She let us shift our date when my mom got sick. Total class act. Margaret Chen, the owner. I clicked over to LinkedIn. There she was, Margaret Chen, founder and owner of Grand Laurel Estate. Her profile listed her background: former event planner, MBA from a state school, had built the venue from the ground up over 15 years. Her posts were about small business ownership, supporting local vendors, creating meaningful experiences. She looked kind, professional. And this was important. She looked like someone who cared about integrity. I filed that away. Next, I went back to my bank records. I screenshotted the transactions from March, the 2 withdrawals, $24,000 each. I noted the dates, cross-referenced them with what I knew about venue deposits. Then I did something that felt a little unhinged, but also perfectly rational. I created a fake Facebook account. Generic name, stolen profile photo from a stock image site, just enough activity to look real. And I requested to join the private wedding planning group Brittany had mentioned at the shower. It took 6 hours, but I was approved. The group was a gold mine. Brittany had posted asterisk everything: budget breakdowns, vendor contracts, her neurotic questions about napkin colors and cake flavors. She'd even posted a photo of the venue contract, partially redacted, but not well. I zoomed in. The contract was in my parents' names, Robert and Karen Westfield. Not Brittany's, my parents', which meant they were the legal parties. They were the ones who'd signed. They were the ones who could modify, cancel, or transfer the booking. Interesting. I took screenshots of everything: the budget posts, the timeline, a comment from my mother: "We're so happy to invest in Brittany's future. She deserves the world." I organized it all into a folder on my desktop. Evidence. Then I went deeper. I pulled up the original college fund paperwork, the documents Grandma had given me when I was 16. I'd kept them in a fireproof box with my birth certificate and social security card, the kind of things you're supposed to keep safe. I read through them again, slowly this time. The account was titled, Educational and Early Life Fund for Maya last name. There was a letter attached, handwritten by Grandma, not legally binding but clear in intent. This fund is designated for Maya's educational expenses, housing, and costs associated with launching her adult life. It is my wish that these funds be used solely for her benefit. I scanned the letter, scanned the account documents, added them to the folder. Then I made a spreadsheet. Column 1, date. Column 2, transaction. Column 3, amount. Column 4, notes. I went back through asterisk years of records, documenting every time my parents had helped Brittany while I scraped by. It was horrifying to see it all in one place. $18,000 for Brittany's car. $1,200 a month for her rent, which they still paid. $3,500 for a trip to Europe she took with friends. $800 for her laptop, $600 for her phone, $2,000 for her credit card debt they'd quietly covered. Meanwhile, my side of the ledger. $0. I'd asked for help once, sophomore year, when I got strep throat and couldn't work for a week. I needed $300 to cover my rent gap. My dad had said, "You're an adult now, Maya. Time to figure it out." I'd sold my textbooks and eaten plain rice for 2 weeks. The contrast was so stark it made me nauseous. I saved the spreadsheet as financial history, added it to the folder. Then I navigated back to the Grand Laurel Estate website and found the contact page. I stared at the email address for a long time. I wasn't ready to reach out yet. I didn't have a full plan, but I was building something. Piece by piece. Document by document. I was creating leverage. And for the first time since that horrible Sunday dinner, I felt something other than helpless rage. I felt powerful. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks after the bridal shower. I was going through the college fund documents again. I'd read them so many times I could practically recite them, when something clicked. The account designation, Educational and Early Life Fund for Maya Westfield. The keyword wasn't educational, it was for. This fund was ** me. Grandma's letter made that crystal clear. And while I'd already confirmed with Sandra the lawyer that it wasn't enough to win a lawsuit, I started thinking about it differently. This wasn't about criminal court. This wasn't even about civil court. This was about public perception, about morality, about proving to someone who mattered that my parents had taken something that wasn't theirs to take. And the someone who mattered was Margaret Chen. I pulled up the venue contract photo again, the one Brittany had posted, poorly redacted. I zoomed in until the pixels started to blur, then used a photo enhancement tool I'd found online. There it was, clear as day. Contract holders, Robert and Karen Westfield. Not Brittany Westfield. My parents had signed the contract. They were the legal parties, which meant any modifications, cancellations, or disputes would go through them, not my sister. I went back to the venue's policies page and read it again, even more carefully this time. Grand Laurel Estate reserves the right to cancel or modify any contract in cases of venue damage, force majeure, double booking due to administrative error, or evidence of fraud or misrepresentation in the booking process. Fraud or misrepresentation. I sat back, heart pounding. What if I could prove, not in a court of law, but to Margaret Chen personally, that the deposit had been obtained through betrayal, that the money used wasn't freely given, but taken from someone it was designated for? It wasn't fraud in the legal sense, but it was morally bankrupt. And if Margaret was the kind of person her LinkedIn suggested, someone who cared about integrity, about doing right by people, maybe that would matter to her. But I couldn't just cancel the wedding. That would be cruel for cruelty's sake, and I'd be no better than them. I needed to do something better with that venue, something that would transform this from petty revenge into justice. I needed to give it to someone who actually deserved it. The idea crystallized slowly, over the course of an hour, until it felt less like a plan and more like a calling. I would contact Margaret Chen. I would present my case, documentation, timeline, grandma's letter, everything. I would explain what had been done to me, and I would offer her an alternative. Let me bring her a couple or a cause that was worthy of that space, something that would make her feel good about the decision to revoke my parents' contract. It was risky. She could say no. She could tell me it wasn't her problem. She could forward my email to my parents and blow up the whole thing. But I didn't think she would. I opened a blank document and started drafting an email. I wrote and deleted 7 versions before I got it right. Respectful, clear, factual. I attached scans of the fund documents, grandma's letter, the bank statements showing the withdrawals, and a timeline that made the connection impossible to miss. I didn't send it yet. I had one more piece to put in place. I needed my worthy recipient. Jessica worked 3 cubicles down from me at the nonprofit where I'd landed a job after graduation. She was a social worker, spent her days dealing with the kind of heartbreak that would break most people, and she still showed up every morning with a smile and a thermos of terrible coffee. We'd become friends over shared lunches in the depressing break room, bonding over being overworked and underpaid, but stubborn enough to believe the work mattered. 2 months ago, she'd come in with a ring on her finger, small, modest, clearly bought on a teacher's salary, because that's what her fiancé Marcus was. 3rd-grade teacher, also a veteran, also one of the kindest people I'd ever met, based on the way Jessica talked about him. I'd asked about wedding plans. She'd laughed and said, "We're thinking my parents' backyard and a taco truck. We've got about 8,000 saved up, and that's after 2 years of both of us working overtime." She hadn't said it bitterly, just practically. Like that was life and you made it beautiful anyway. Now, watching her at her desk sorting through case files and sipping her awful coffee, I thought, she deserves the Grand Laurel estate a hell of a lot more than Brittany does. I waited until lunch, then approached carefully. "Hey, can I ask you something kind of weird?" Jessica looked up, curious. Weirder than the time you asked if I thought your landlord was running a raccoon fighting ring in the basement. Different kind of weird. I sat down. You're still planning the backyard wedding, right? Yeah, why? What if I told you I might have a way to get you a venue? Like, a really nice venue. Her eyebrows shot up. Define really nice. The kind of place that normally costs 50 grand. She actually laughed. Maya, what are you talking about? I chose my words carefully. I'm working on something. I can't promise it'll work out, but if it does, would you and Marcus be interested in a venue upgrade? You'd probably still need to pay something, but way less than you'd think. Maybe what you'd spend on the backyard wedding anyway. Jessica studied me. She was good at reading people, occupational hazard. This has something to do with your family, doesn't it? The stuff you told me about your sister's wedding. I told her some of it. Not everything, but enough that she knew there was bad blood. It might. Are you going to get in trouble? Not the legal kind. She was quiet for a moment. Then, if you can pull off whatever you're planning, and it means Marcus and I get to have a wedding somewhere nicer than my mom's patio with the broken grill, yeah, we're interested. It might happen fast, like you need to be ready to sign a contract quickly. Maya, we've been engaged for 2 years. We'd get married tomorrow if we could afford it. Fast is not a problem. I smiled. Okay, let me see what I can do. And Jess, don't mention this to anyone yet, not even Marcus. This is either going to be the best thing ever or a complete disaster, isn't it? Probably both. I sent the email to Margaret Chen that night. Subject line, inquiry regarding booking ethics and alternate opportunity. I kept it professional, explained who I was, outlined the situation with clinical precision, attached all my documentation. I acknowledged that legally, my parents had done nothing wrong, but I wanted her to understand the full context of where the deposit money had come from. Then I made my offer. I'm not asking you to simply cancel their contract out of spite. I'm asking you to consider whether there might be a more deserving recipient for that date. I have a couple in mind, both public servants, a social worker and a teacher, who have been saving for years for a modest wedding. They would be honored and grateful beyond words for the opportunity to marry at your venue, and they could afford a scaled-down package if you were willing to work with them. I believe your venue stands for something more than just luxury. I think it stands for celebrating love and commitment in a way that honors people's values. My sister's wedding was purchased with stolen dreams, but it could become something better. I understand if this is too complicated or if you prefer not to get involved, but I wanted you to have the full story. I included my phone number and hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I waited. 1 day, 2 days. On the 3rd day, my phone rang. Unknown number. Is this Maya Westfield? Yes. This is Margaret Chen from the Grand Laurel Estate. I received your email. Do you have time to meet in person? My heart stopped. Yes, absolutely. How's tomorrow afternoon? Say 2 o'clock. I'll be there. The Grand Laurel Estate was was even more beautiful in person than in photos. I pulled up to the circular driveway at 1:55, wearing the one professional dress I owned and carrying a folder with printed copies of everything I'd sent digitally. Margaret met me at the entrance. She was in her 50s, elegant in a simple black sheath dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her expression was neutral but not cold. "Maya, come in. Let's talk in my office." Her office overlooked the gardens. There were photos on the walls, weddings, hundreds of them, moments of joy frozen in time. She gestured for me to sit and got right to it. "I read your email. I've also reviewed the documents you sent." She folded her hands on her desk. "I want to be clear, what your parents did is appalling. But you're right that it's not illegal, and I can't cancel a contract simply because I disapprove of how the deposit was obtained." My heart sank. "However," she continued, "I didn't build this business to host events that are fundamentally rooted in cruelty and selfishness, and I do have some discretion in how I manage my bookings." I leaned forward. "What kind of discretion?" "The contract your parents signed includes a clause about payment schedules. The balance is due 60 days before the event. Your sister's wedding is in 5 months, which means the balance will be due in 3 months. If they fail to meet that deadline, I can cancel for non-payment." "But they'll pay it. They've already spent this much." "Perhaps, but there are other clauses." She pulled out a copy of the contract. "I can also require early payment if I have reason to believe the financial arrangement is unstable or if there are irregularities that need to be verified." I started to understand. You could require them to pay early. I could, and I could ask them to verify the source of their funds, given that there's been a complaint about financial misconduct. Would they have to prove it? They'd have to provide something: bank statements, documentation. And if they can't or won't, I can cite concerns about their ability to fulfill the contract and offer them alternatives. A different date, a refund of the deposit minus cancellation fees, or early payment of the full balance. How much is the cancellation fee? 20% of the deposit. That's standard. I did the math. They'd paid $26,000 as a deposit. 20% was $5,200. They'd get back about $21,000. Not the full amount. Not enough to book another venue of the same caliber on short notice. But also not nothing. Margaret watched me process this. "I want to be clear about my motivations, Maya. I'm not doing this to punish your family, though I think what they did to you is unconscionable. I'm doing this because I read about your friend, the social worker, and the teacher. I looked them up, actually. I hope you don't mind." "You looked up Jessica." "Public records, social media. I wanted to know if you were being truthful." She smiled slightly. "You were. She seems like exactly the kind of person who deserves something special, and I like the idea of my venue being part of that story instead of the other one." I felt tears prick my eyes and blink them back. "So you'll do it?" "I'll create the opportunity. I'll contact your parents, explain that there's been an internal review of bookings, and we've discovered a potential scheduling conflict. I'll offer them the alternatives. My guess is they'll refuse the new date and demand to keep the original, at which point I'll require early payment and verification of funds. And when they can't provide it, then I'll enforce the cancellation clause, refund the deposit minus fees, and the date becomes available. At which point I'll offer it to your friends at cost. No markup, no profit for me. Just enough to cover my vendors and staff. Based on what you told me about their budget, I'm thinking somewhere in the range of $8,000 to $10,000 for a simplified package." "Jessica will cry. She'll actually cry." "Good. I like tears of joy much better than tears of entitlement." Margaret's expression softened. "But Maya, you need to understand, this is going to detonate your family relationships. Once your parents realize what's happened, they'll know you were involved. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Sunday dinners where I was invisible, about my grandmother's broken promises, about working 3 jobs and eating ramen while Brittany posted vacation photos, about being called selfish for wanting my own future back. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared." "Then let's do it. Margaret called my parents 4 days later. I wasn't on the line, but she told me about it afterward. She'd been professional, apologetic even. Explained that during a routine audit of their booking system, they discovered a potential double booking issue with the date, a previous tentative hold that hadn't been properly cleared. She offered them 3 options. Move to a weekend in October off-season, less desirable. Accept a full refund of the deposit minus the 20% cancellation fee, or keep the original date but pay the remaining balance immediately and provide verification of funds as part of their audit compliance. My mother, according to Margaret, had been immediately combative. This is unacceptable. We have a signed contract. You can't just change the terms. I'm not changing the terms, Mrs. Westfield. The contract includes clauses that allow for schedule modifications in the event of administrative issues, which this is. I'm offering you several options to remedy the situation. We're keeping the original date. That's non-negotiable. Then I'll need the balance of $26,000 within 7 business days, along with bank statements verifying the source of funds. There'd been a long pause. Why do you need to verify our funds? That's invasive and completely inappropriate. It's part of our audit process. We've had issues in the past with fraudulent payments, and we're tightening our protocols. I'm requiring this of all bookings under review. Another pause. I could imagine my mother's face, red and pinched. We don't have the balance available immediately. We were planning to pay according to the original schedule. I understand, but given the scheduling conflict, I need to secure the booking one way or another. If you can't provide early payment, I'd recommend taking the refund or the alternative date. Let me talk to my husband. The call had ended there. 10 minutes later, my dad had called back. Margaret, this is Robert Westfield. I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're happy to keep our payment schedule as outlined in the original contract. We can't pay the full balance right now. We have other wedding expenses already committed, but we'll have it in 3 months as planned. I appreciate that, Mr. Westfield, but unfortunately the audit requirements override the original schedule. I need either early payment with verification, or I need you to select one of the alternative options. This is ridiculous. You're trying to force us out so you can book someone else at a higher rate. I assure you that's not the case. The alternative booking I have in mind is actually at a lower rate than yours. That, Margaret told me, had shut him up for a moment. Then why would you do that? Because the couple in question has a compelling story, and I believe they'd be a better fit for our venue's values. Our money isn't good enough for you. Your money is fine, Mr. Westfield. It's the source I'm concerned about. Silence, long and damning. Are you accusing us of something? I'm asking for verification, which is my right under the contract. If you can't or won't provide it, then we'll proceed with the cancellation and refund. My father had tried to bluster a bit more, but Margaret held firm. She gave them 72 hours to decide. Pay the balance early with documentation, take the October date, or accept the refund. She called me that evening to update me. They're going to refuse, she said. I can hear it in their voices. They don't have the money available, and they definitely don't want to explain where the deposit came from. So the venue will open up. It will. Are your friends ready? I'll call Jessica tonight. Then we're in motion, Maya. No going back now. I hung up and sat in the silence of my apartment, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. Somewhere across town, my parents were panicking. Brittany was probably having a meltdown. The family group chat was likely exploding. And I had them all on mute. I pulled up Jessica's contact and typed out a message. Remember that venue thing I mentioned? It's happening. Can you and Marcus meet tomorrow to sign paperwork? You're getting married at the Grand Laurel Estate. Her response came in seconds. What? Are you serious? Maya, what did you do? I smiled. Something I should have done a long time ago. I'll explain everything. But trust me, you deserve this. I sent one more message that night. A certified letter, drafted with Sandra, the lawyer's help, sent to my parents' address with copies to Brittany. Dear Mom and Dad *. This letter is formal notice requesting reimbursement of $48,000 taken from the educational fund established for me by Grandma Joan. As documented in the attached materials, these funds were designated for my use, and their reallocation without my knowledge or consent constitutes a betrayal of Grandma's wishes and my trust. I am requesting full reimbursement within 30 days. If you are unable or unwilling to comply, I will consider this matter closed, but I will no longer participate in family events or maintain contact. Sincerely, Meyer *. I knew they wouldn't pay. That wasn't the point. The point was documentation, a paper trail, evidence that I'd asked, that I'd tried, that I'd given them every opportunity to make it right. So when everything fell apart, and it was about to, no one could say I hadn't warned them. I mailed the letter the next morning. And then I waited for the explosion. The 72-hour deadline ended on a Friday at 5 p.m. Margaret called me at 5:17. They chose the refund. I was in my apartment, packing, and I had to sit down. They actually did it. Your father called an hour ago. He was extremely hostile, accused me of discrimination and breach of contract, threatened to sue, the whole performance. But ultimately, he couldn't meet the payment requirement. He accepted the refund minus cancellation fees. I'm processing it now. They'll have a check for $20,800 by end of business next week. $20,000. Not even half of what they'd stolen from me, and nowhere near enough to book a comparable venue with 5 months' notice. What about Brittany? Did she call? Your mother did on her behalf. A lot of crying, a lot of this is my daughter's special day. A lot of accusations that I was ruining her life. I stayed professional, told her I sympathize, but the contract terms are clear, and I have another couple ready to book immediately. Did you tell them who? No, just that it was a couple whose story aligned more closely with our values. Your mother asked if it was someone who offered more money. I said no, it was someone who'd be paying less, actually. That seemed to upset her more than anything. I could picture it. Mom's face going red, that vein in her forehead poolsing. The injustice of someone else getting what Brittany wanted for less * would be unbearable to her. When can Jessica come in? Tomorrow, if she's available. I'll have the contract ready. Same date, scaled down package, $8,500 total. She's already put down half as deposit based on our conversation, so she just needs to sign and pay the balance 60 days out. Margaret, my voice cracked. Thank you, you didn't have to do any of this. Yes, I did. Her voice was firm but kind. I've been in this business 20 years, Maya. I've seen a lot of weddings. The ones that matter aren't the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones where people understand what they're celebrating. Your friend gets that. Your sister doesn't. We hung up, and I immediately texted Jessica. It's official. The venue is yours. Margaret wants you there tomorrow at 10 a.m. to sign. Bring Marcus, bring tissues. Then I sat back and waited, because I knew what was coming next. The first call came at 6:23 p.m. Brittany, I let it go to voicemail. Maya, what the fuck did you do? The venue canceled on us. They fucking canceled. Mom is losing her mind. Dad's talking about lawyers, and they said someone else is taking our date. Did you have something to do with this? Call me back right now. 3 more calls. I didn't answer. Then a text from my mother. If you had anything to do with what happened with the venue, you need to tell us immediately. This is your sister's wedding, Maya. Fix this. I turned my phone to do not disturb and made myself dinner. Pasta with jarred sauce. Poured a glass of wine. Sat on my couch and ate slowly, deliberately. I'd expected anger, but the entitlement, the assumption that even now, even after everything, I owed them help, was almost funny. At 8:47 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. My parents, Brittany, all 3 of them standing in the hallway of my building, looking like a furious, well-dressed mob. I took a breath, opened the door but left the chain on. What do you want? Let us in. My father's voice was tight, controlled. We need to talk. We can talk like this. Maya, this is serious. My mother's face was blotchy, like she'd been crying. The venue canceled Brittany's wedding. They said they're giving the date to someone else, and we think we have reason to believe you were involved. Okay. Her eyes widened. Okay, that's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? Brittany pushed forward. Did you do this? Did you call them and fuck with my wedding? I contacted Margaret Chen, yes. I explained the situation to her. I showed her where the deposit money came from. The silence was deafening. Then my father, you had no right. I had every right. That was my money. Money Grandma left for me. You stole it and used it to buy Brittany's dream venue, and you didn't even have the decency to tell me until after the fact. We didn't steal anything, my mother hissed. We had legal access to that account. Legal doesn't mean right. You knew what that fund was for. Grandma told you. She told all of us. Your grandmother is dead. My mother's voice was ice. And she didn't put legal restrictions on the fund, which means we were free to use our judgment as parents. Your judgment? I felt the rage rising, clean and sharp. You judged that Brittany's party was more important than my future. You judged that I didn't deserve the thing Grandma wanted me to have. And now you're here, demanding I fix the consequences of your own actions. This is vindictive and cruel, my father said. Whatever issues you have with us, Brittany doesn't deserve to have her wedding ruined. I worked 3 jobs to get through college. I sold my plasma for grocery money. I didn't go to a single party, didn't study abroad, didn't do anything that cost money because I was terrified of drowning in debt. And the whole time, you were sitting on $50,000 that was supposed to be mine, planning how to spend it on her. That's not fair, Brittany said, and her voice was shaking. I didn't know about the fund. I didn't ask them to use it. You didn't ask where the money came from either. You just took it. You took the venue, the dress, the fantasy wedding, and you didn't once think about what it cost. I thought they'd been saving. They had been. Grandma had been for me. Brittany's face crumpled. I didn't know. And you didn't care enough to ask. My mother made a disgusted noise. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so bitter, Maya. You've always been jealous of your sister. I'm not jealous. I'm done. I pulled the chain off the door and opened it fully. Then I walked to my kitchen counter and picked up the folder I'd prepared, the one I knew I'd need eventually. I handed it to my father. What is this? Evidence. Grandma's letter designating the fund for my educational and early life expenses. Bank statements showing the withdrawals that match exactly with the venue deposit timeline. Screenshots from Brittany's wedding planning group, where you both talk about investing in her future with no mention of where the money came from. A timeline of every time you paid for Brittany's life, while telling me I needed to be independent. And a copy of the certified letter I sent you requesting reimbursement. My father opened the folder. I watched his face as he flipped through the pages. You've been documenting. Everything, yes, because I knew you'd deny it. I knew you'd make me the villain, so I built a case. A case for what? You said yourself you can't sue us. I can't, but I can make sure everyone knows the truth. My mother's eyes narrowed. If you spread lies about this family. They're not lies. They're bank statements and screenshots, facts, timestamps, your own words. I crossed my arms. You want to know what I did? I showed Margaret Chen that folder. I explained how her venue deposit was funded by money that was earmarked for my education. And I offered her an alternative, a couple who actually deserves that space. A social worker and a teacher who have been saving for years. People who understand the value of what they're getting. You gave our venue to strangers. Brittany's voice was climbing toward hysteria. Maya, that was MY wedding. It was my college fund. That's not the same thing. You're right, it's not. A wedding is one day. My education was 4 years of my life. But you've always been more important, haven't you, Britt? Your dance recital over my winter concert. Your mediocre report cards over my valedictorian speech. Your car, your rent, your credit card debt, your dream wedding, all more important than anything I ever needed. "That's not true," my mother said, but her voice was weak. "It is true, and I'm done pretending it isn't." I looked at each of them. "You spent my future on her wedding, so I took the wedding back and gave it to someone worthy, and I don't feel bad about it." My father's face was purple. "You're being incredibly selfish." "Good, I've earned it. If you think we're going to let this go." "What are you going to do, Dad? Sue me? For what? I didn't break any laws. I told the truth to a business owner who had the right to cancel your contract. Everything I did was legal and documented." He opened his mouth, closed it. Brittany was crying now, full-on sobbing. "I can't believe you hate me this much." And for the first time, I felt something crack, not regret, but sadness. "I don't hate you, Brittany. I hate what you represent. I hate that Mom and Dad love you more than they ever loved me. I hate that you got everything handed to you while I fought for scraps. But you're just a spoiled kid who never learned to see past yourself. That's not entirely your fault. They made you that way." I looked at my parents. "But you too. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose her over me every single time, and you expected me to smile and be grateful for the leftovers. Well, I'm not grateful, and I'm not your doormat anymore." "If you do this," my mother said, her voice shaking, "you're not part of this family." "I haven't been part of this family for a long time. You just didn't notice." I stepped back and put my hand on the door. "You need to leave now. If you don't, I'll call the police and report you for trespassing." "Maya," my father started. "Leave." They stood there for another few seconds. Brittany crying, my mother looking like she wanted to hit me, my father clutching the folder like it was a live grenade. Then they turned and walked away. I closed the door, locked it, put the chain back on. And then I slid down to the floor and let myself shake. The fallout was nuclear. Within 24 hours, the extended family knew. My mother had called everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, even family friends, spinning the story her way. Maya sabotaged her sister's wedding out of jealousy and spite. But I'd been ready for that too. I created a single email, attached the full evidence packet, Grandma's letter, the bank statements, the timeline, screenshots of my parents' own words. I wrote a brief explanation. "You've probably heard one version of this story. Here's the complete truth with documentation. I'm not asking anyone to take sides. I just want you to have the facts." I sent it to my grandmother's siblings, my great-aunts and great-uncles, to the cousins who'd known Grandma Joan, to the family members who'd been at her funeral and heard her talk about how proud she was of me. The response was split, exactly as I'd expected. Half the family closed ranks around my parents. Family business should stay private. You're airing dirty laundry. Even if they were wrong, you shouldn't have retaliated. But the other half, especially the older generation, the ones who'd known Grandma best, were appalled. My great-aunt Linda called me furious, not at me, at my parents. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of them," she said, her voice hard. "She set up that fund because she knew asterisk, they favored Brittany. She wanted to make sure you had something that was yours, and they spit on her memory by stealing it. I didn't want to cause a family war." "You didn't cause this, honey. They did, and they need to face it." 3 of my cousins reached out privately with similar messages. One of them, Sarah, who'd struggled to pay for college herself, said, "I always wondered why you seemed so stressed in school. Now I know. I'm so sorry, Maya, and I'm proud of you for fighting back." My parents tried to threaten legal action. They had a lawyer send me a cease and desist letter claiming I was defaming them. I sent the letter to Sandra, my legal aid lawyer. She laughed. "They have no case. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Everything you shared is documented fact. If anything, you could potentially sue them for misappropriation of funds, though I still don't recommend it." "I don't want to sue them. I just want them to leave me alone." "Send them a response through me, lawyer to lawyer. That'll shut them up." It did. Sandra's letter was polite and devastating. Ms. Westfield has shared only truthful, documented information with family members who have a legitimate interest in the matter. No defamation has occurred. Furthermore, any continued harassment of Ms. Westfield may constitute grounds for a restraining order. We recommend your client cease all contact. I didn't hear from my parents again. Brittany, though Brittany tried. A week after the confrontation, she sent a long text. It was half apology, half justification. I'm sorry you felt hurt by how things went with the fund. I really didn't know it was supposed to be yours, but I also think you went way too far. My engagement is basically over because Chad thinks I'm too high maintenance now, and I can't find another venue that's not either terrible or insanely expensive. You got your revenge, but you also ruined my life. I hope it was worth it. I read it twice, then I blocked her number. Because the thing was, her engagement falling apart wasn't my fault. If Chad left her because a venue cancellation made him see who she really was, that was between them. And yes, it was worth it. Meanwhile, Jessica and Marcus were living a fairy tale. Jessica had cried so hard at the venue signing that Margaret brought her tissues and a glass of water. Marcus kept looking around the estate like he couldn't believe it was real. "This is too much," Jessica said to me afterward. "Maya, what did you do? How is this even possible?" I told her the whole story, all of it. When I finished, she hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry your family is awful, but I'm grateful you exist. You deserve this, Jess. You and Marcus, you're good people. So are you." I wasn't sure that was true. Good people probably didn't dismantle their sister's wedding. But I was learning that sometimes. Being good meant being ruthless with people who refused to respect you. 6 months later, I'm standing in that circular driveway again, watching Jessica and Marcus walk into the grand Laurel estate for their wedding day. The morning is perfect. Golden light, clear sky, the scent of roses from the garden. Jessica looks back at me one more time, her eyes shining, and mouths thank you. I wave her on. Margaret comes out to greet me. They're going to have a beautiful day. They are. How are you doing? It's a loaded question. She knows what this cost me. I'm okay, better than okay, actually. And it's true. The first few months were hard. I grieved the family I'd wanted, even as I cut ties with the family I had. I went to therapy, sliding scale, because I still couldn't afford the regular kind. I worked through the anger and the sadness and the weird, hollow feeling of being an orphan by choice. But slowly, I built something new. I moved to a better apartment, nothing fancy, but it had actual sunlight and a kitchen where the stove worked. I kept my job at the nonprofit. I stayed close with Jessica and Marcus, with the coworkers who'd become real friends. And I started something else. A side project at first, a blog, then a consulting service. I called it Second-Generation Financial Literacy. I helped young people, especially women, navigate financial abuse from family members, how to protect assets, how to document, how to set boundaries, when to walk away. It turned out there were a lot of people who needed that advice. The blog took off. I started getting requests for one-on-one consultations. Then speaking requests, small stuff, local community centers and college workshops, but it mattered. I told my story over and over, and every time someone would come up to me afterward and say, "That happened to me too. I thought I was the only one." You're never the only one. I still have student loans. I'm still working 2 jobs, but I'm not drowning anymore. And I have something my sister will never have, self-respect that no one can take from me. Last week, I drove to the cemetery where Grandma Joan is buried. I brought flowers, daisies, her favorite. I sat on the grass next to her headstone and told her everything. "I'm sorry I couldn't save the fund," I said out loud, not caring if anyone heard. "But I stopped them from using it to erase me, and I hope that's what you would have wanted." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the oak tree overhead. I stayed there for an hour just sitting, remembering her hands holding mine. Her voice, "This is for you, Maya. Don't let anyone tell you different." I hadn't let them. When I stood to leave, I felt lighter. Not healed exactly, but whole. Now, watching Jessica's wedding unfold in the place that was supposed to be Brittany's, I feel something I didn't expect. Peace. I didn't get my college fund back. Probably never will. My parents kept the $20,800 refund, and I never saw a cent of it, which is exactly what I predicted. But I got something more important. I got proof that I mattered, that my boundaries mattered, that I didn't have to accept cruelty just because it came from family. I learned that documentation is power, that speaking up, even when your voice shakes, is survival, that you can't negotiate with people who fundamentally don't value you. And I learned that boundaries aren't cruel. Cutting off my family wasn't revenge. It was self-preservation. They taught me I was disposable. I taught myself I wasn't. Jessica's ceremony starts in an hour. I'm staying for it, sitting in the back, watching two people who actually love and respect each other promise forever. Afterward, there will be dancing and cake and joy that isn't built on anyone's stolen dreams. And tomorrow, I'll go back to my regular life. My small apartment, my 2 jobs, my growing consulting practice. I'll keep telling my story. Because here's what I want you to know, if you're listening to this, and you've ever been erased by your own family. You're not alone. If someone has stolen your resources, financial, emotional, whatever, and then gaslit you into thinking you're selfish for wanting them back, you're not crazy. You're not cruel. You're not the villain. And you deserve better. Document everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every promise broken. Because the people who hurt you will lie about it later, and you'll need proof. Understand that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone access to your life, your money, or your energy just because you share DNA. Read what you sign. Know what you're entitled to. Don't trust people to handle things for you, even if they're family, especially if they're family. And know this, walking away from people who don't value you isn't giving up. It's leveling up. I didn't get a Hollywood ending. I'm not rich. I'm not famous. My family didn't have a tearful reconciliation and apologize. But I got myself back. And that's worth more than any wedding. So if this story resonated with you, if you've been the scapegoat, the forgotten one, the person expected to set yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm, drop a comment. Tell me where you're listening from. Share your story if you feel safe doing so. You'd be amazed how much power there is in saying the truth out loud. And if this reminded you that you have more control than you think, that strategic documentation and clear boundaries can change your life, hit that like button. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the world tells women to be nice, to keep the peace, to sacrifice for family. I'm here to tell you, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is choose yourself. I did. And I'd do it again.